You know it's hard out here for a pimp when he tryna get this money for the rent, for the Cadillacs and gas money spent. We'll have a whole lot of bitches jumping shit. You know it's hard out here for a pimp when he tryna get this money for the rent, for the Cadillacs and gas money spent. Will cause a whole lot of jumping shit. You know it's hard out here for a pimp when he tryna get this money for the rent, for the Cadillacs and gas money spent. Will have a whole lot of jumping shit.
What's going on, party people? It's your man, 50 Grand, the Godfather, Nate Milton, and you are about to listen to another excellent episode from the Nefarious Media Network. Since January of 2025, we have been putting it down for the crown, and we've been committed to bringing you truthful, thoughtful, turned-up commentary as it pertains to the worlds of sports, politics, pop culture, pro wrestling, entertainment, and life. Yes, life. This thing that we are all just trying to get through day by day. An electric word called life, as the man used to say. And that brings us to the drive for 500. Yes, 500 YouTube subscribers, which gets us halfway to monetization, and 500 Patreon subscribers. Patreon.com/Nefarious Media Network. That's our stretch goal for the year. Because if we hit those marks, it allows us the flexibility and the freedom and the funds, quite honestly, to do some more things here at the network, to be more consistent with our shows, to bring you new shows, and to bring some people on to help with production. So if you believe in us, man, if you believe in what we're doing here, because we got a lot of hard-working people, myself included, working 50, 60 hours a week at the shoot jobs, got families, got kids, got responsibilities, but we still do this, man, because we love this and we believe in this. And if you believe in us and you love the shows that we do, help us out, man. Help a brother out. Help a sister out. That's all we asking, because we are trying to change the game by any means necessary, even if those means may be nefarious.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
This is SBF, Styles Break Fights, with your hosts, Chinyere Okafor and Ray Williams, presented by the Nefarious Media Network.
Hi. It's your boy, Two-Way Ray Williams, and welcome back to another installment of the Styles Break Fights podcast, presented by the Nefarious Media Network. So excited to bring you another installment, the August 2025 edition of this podcast. And if you couldn't tell by my lack of pause and those usual sounds that you hear from the maestro, Chichi Okafor, that is because she could not be a part of this month's episode. She has been very, very busy over the last week with fight weeks for not only one, but two promotions when it comes to the UFC 126 event that was held over the weekend, as well as her covering PFL 2 over in Johannesburg. So she is taking a well-deserved, well-earned, well-needed break. But just because Chi-Chi isn't here doesn't mean I am alone. Yes, I do have a very, very special guest. If you guys have been following MMA for a lengthy period of time, you are familiar with the voice that is upcoming. This brother has been doing play-by-play and color commentary for a number of different organizations, and he is very, very well renowned within the mixed martial arts space, and I am so proud and grateful to have him be a part of this interview today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. Again, he has been the voice for many promotions such as Bellator, such as UFC. You may have even heard him on WWE before, and now currently he's doing color commentary for Pro Box TV and PFL. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on brother Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith, how are you today, sir?
Doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me, man. Really appreciate it. Great intro.
Oh, thank you. I was doing my best. I was practicing in my head. I don't script these things, but I was practicing in my head several times. But before we get into some of the stuff that you've been doing, there's been some breaking news out the top of the morning. If those are not aware, UFC has now decided to leave from ESPN starting in 2026. They have partnered up with Paramount. They will be streaming both their not pay-per-views anymore, but marquee numbered events and their fight night events exclusively on Paramount Plus, and some will be airing on CBS, their marquee network, broadcast network, I should say. And the deal has been struck, or the deal has been announced this morning. No pay-per-views, Brother Smith. No more pay-per-views in the UFC. They are strictly going to air all of that content. So what do you think? First off, this is a monstrous deal. I believe the terms are 7 years, $7 billion, $7.7 billion over the span of that deal, meaning $1.1 billion per year on average. So first off, what do you see is the impact that this will have on pay-per-view rights, not just for MMA, but also for boxing, because we've been seeing that, and I believe Luke Thomas mentioned this when he was talking about the deal. Top Rank no longer has a regular TV deal. PBC doesn't have like a regular TV deal. Right. So what do you think is the impact of this particular deal, where there are no pay-per-views anymore? They're strictly going by their streaming deal. What do you think this impact will be on the landscape of combat sports as a whole?
Well, there might be the end of the pay-per-view model, period. It just is. I mean, if the UFC, which had been doing well with pay-per-views, decides to abandon that model, it kind of shows that it's a bit outmoded. $7.7 billion over 7 years, an incredible amount of money. For context, I think ESPN was $220 million or something like that. So what they've gotten is just extraordinary, considering, you know, the current landscape of media, and it's just the faith they have in long-term, consistent live sports for 7 years is worth a tremendous amount of money. It's one of the few things people, you know, pay to watch on time, in a sense, right? And it's the idea that they have faith in the UFC's brand for the next 7 years, which in media, as you know, is a long time. 7 years is forever. So the idea that they believe that the brand will still be strong in 7 years, coming off of 2025, that domestically in the United States, you know, I don't want to say it's kind of a down year, but, you know, you had one American champion. That was John Jones. We kept getting teased with the John Jones-Tom Aspinall fight. That never happened. And not a lot of marquee fights going on in 2025. And even then, they get $1.1 billion a year. It shows the strength of the brand. And I do believe that pay-per-view model is kind of going away, because a lot of people say, I'm already paying X per month for your platform, and now it's X more for a pay-per-view. And a lot of people just don't want to, you know, take that leap. Also, when you see it so many different ways, you know, through piracy and other stuff, that catch the highlights on YouTube the next day. So the idea that paying extra money to a lot of people wasn't worth it. And I think the UFC and Paramount recognized that, but it really says a lot about the strength of the UFC brand.
Yes, indeed. And I did want to also mention as well, I was very, very happy that it was one, I believe it was one pay-per-view is which ESPN kind of butchered the pay-per-view. It's the way they had to put it on for free anyway. So I was very happy because I was subscribed to ESPN Plus that time. So thank you for that, ESPN Plus. But I also want to add, you do mention that kind of with the lack of big name stars that we have right now, especially in the American sphere or on the American side of UFC, how do you think the numbered events or the, I don't want to say pay-per-views because they're no longer pay-per-views.
The tentpole marquee events, we could say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The marquee events, exactly. How do you think UFC is going to differentiate those from the fight night events, especially considering there's no real incentive? Do you think the UFC has an incentive to differentiate those events from the fight night events and to make those more special?
Yeah, I still think you do. I think you have those big cards you look forward to, and kind of the fight night events kind of are the snack before the big meal, right? You still need those tentpole events. I mean, when I was with Bellator, they did the same thing. They kind of like had these big events that you kind of, marked on your calendar. You're going to need that. There's no way around that. It can't be, like the WWE, who I worked for before. They had their, WrestleMania, they had Money in the Bank, they had, SummerSlam, these big tentpole events. And in between that, you have SmackDown and Raw, which you have for 4 days a week. So yeah, pay-per-views going away, but the idea that you need big fight cards, I don't think that goes away. Now, how you differentiate them is very, very interesting, because a lot of them we're seeing can have like a great main event, a great co-main, but everything below that, you don't know the difference between that and a main card fight. So you might have to stack kind of the main card a little bit more in order to let people know that this is something special and big and different. Also the numbering system and all these things where this is an official UFC, it's not a fight night, you're going to weigh heavily on that. But also remember, a lot of fighters, champions, had pay-per-view clauses where, they got a percentage of the pay-per-view because they were champion, as long as they were main event or co-main event, and the contracts were different depending on the fighter. But what do you do with that? I mean, how did Conor McGregor make so much money? It's because he got a percentage of the pay-per-view. Well, there is no pay-per-view. So things have to be restructured in terms of how you pay fighters and how you make a marquee event if it's not a pay-per-view. So they're going to have to figure that out. But I think you're going to have some loaded main cards.
That you make an excellent point, because I've heard other people making that point as well. As far as, especially with MMA, which doesn't have an association or a union, everybody sees the benefit that UFC gets out of this. Everybody sees the benefit that Paramount gets out. Everybody sees the benefit that the fans get out. But as you clearly pointed out, fighters really don't get much of a benefit, besides, especially with the big name fighters who are champions, who's supposed to be getting that pay-per-view clause. So how do you think that is going to be shaped out? Especially like you mentioned, they should be restructuring, but there's no onus on the UFC's part, especially if there's no fighters association to kind of combat that.
It's extremely difficult. It's one of those things where I remember years ago there was an issue with pay for actors and SAG and all this stuff, and they asked an actor, like, why are they getting paid less and less? And they said, well, they're paying less and people are still showing up. And that's really how you have to look at it. If I offer you 10 and 10 to show up and fight, and you sign on the dotted line to do that, I'd be a fool to pay anything more. And the idea that, as you mentioned, without a union, without a athletes association of some kind, if you're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it for you. That's how markets work. And the fighter pay issue has always been an issue that comes up every now and then in the news cycle for, fight media. But the point is, the fighters themselves have to do it. And, the MMA media and people who talk about it can complain about it all day long. But, it seems like the difficulty is fighters don't usually make an issue out of it until they're done fighting, right? And by then it's too late. By then they have no leverage. So it's always been the thing in combat sports, is the power of the promotion versus the power of the fighters. And that's always been the balancing act. And, when fighters get too much power, you get those down years in boxing where it seemed like the best didn't want to fight the best because they didn't have to. Well, when the promotion has too much power, fighters don't fight for very much money and they end up with nothing. So it's that balance that the fighters themselves have to find. And no MMA media, no MMA fan is going to be able to fix it. The fighters themselves have to figure it out.
Yeah, and we were talking about boxing before, especially with Dana White and his relationship with Al Sheikh rather, Turkey Al Sheikh rather.
Yep.
You see the Zuffa boxing is trying to become a bit more of a player within the global boxing brand or zeitgeist. So how do you see it working out? Do you see that similar things especially are going to happen now that Zuffa and TKO are trying to make revisions or get in touch with regulators and other like states or Congress people, our federal Congress people, in order to kind of chip away at the Muhammad Ali Act so that they can kind of bring their monopoly style that they have from the UFC and from WWE into boxing? Do you think that is going to be, TKO is going to have more of a push now that it seems like boxing is ripe for the taking now?
The difficulty is with the current way that boxing contracts work, partly because of the Muhammad Ali Act. The thing about the UFC contracts is, John Jones signed an 8-fight deal that's the rest of his career. He's not going anywhere. He can't fight for anyone else. He's never going to fight for anyone else. GSP famously retired from the sport, and it was, if you come back, you fight for us. There are no sunset clauses on the contracts, things like this. Well, boxing, the contracts are much shorter. You just can't lock someone down for 5 to 10 fights. You just can't do that. So the idea that the structural changes that would have to take place to make boxing fall under a UFC kind of model, that's what they're working towards. But with the current state of boxing contracts, you can't do that. So the idea of we're going to impose this kind of, league UFC type structure to boxing, well, in order to make that work, you have to have that person locked down for the entire time. A lot of, if not all of their prime. It's just a very different business. It works very differently than MMA. Boxing just works under different lines. So the idea that we're going to apply this model to boxing, well, they're going to try, and we'll see if it works. But the way the talent moves around in boxing is very, very different. We'll have to see how that works out in 2026. That's a big question for everybody.
That's true. And I was also thinking, as you were kind of explaining that you do have still the big name fighters like the Canelos, like the Terrence Bud Crawfords, who are going to be fighting one another coming up soon. You still have those big time fighters. Do you think those big time fighters, or those fighters in that kind of range, that either championship range or kind of like that fame range, like a Tank Davis, do you think those kind of fighters are going to be more willing to get into bed with a Zuffa, knowing that kind of the Zuffa model, how it's going to be working over time?
You can't make them sign an 8-fight deal. Right. They won't do it. They'll just say no. The problem is that Canelo Alvarez and Gervonta Davis and, Dimitri Bivol, the big names in boxing, hey, sign this contract. No, I have hundreds of $millions. I don't have to do it, and I'm not gonna. They have a lot more negotiating power. The problem with, if you're trying to negotiate in the UFC, once you sign and once you're in, the system is essentially designed so that you never are a free agent at your absolute peak. You're just not. You're never in a position where I'm earning a ton of money, I'm doing everything I need to do, and I'm going to be a free agent. I'm going to test out the market. Boxers are always in that position every so many years, and so the idea that promotional contracts don't last very long, they're always up in their game and making more and more money. And the idea of sitting down with a Canelo Alvarez who has no reason to sign a contract unless it says everything he wants and gives him the exact money he needs. That's the difference, is that dealing with real boxers who are stars, who have already been established, it's a different ball game. They can command a lot more money. They can command a lot better terms. They take a lot more percentage of the overall profit made by a boxing match. All of this favors the boxer in a way that it doesn't favor mixed martial artists. And so, Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh is kind of used to dealing with this environment, but it costs him a lot of money to sit down with these guys and make a fight happen. Is Dana White willing to do that? That's the question. And that's what held Zuffa boxing back before. It's also difficult to sit there with Canelo Alvarez and make a $500 million deal and turn around and give, Tom Aspinall $2 million to fight, right? So this idea of, and they are separate businesses in a sense, but the optics of something like that can be very, very difficult to deal with. And we'll see how it manages in 2026. It's going to be interesting.
It really is going to be interesting. And one more question that I did have on this partnership now, the new contract for the TV rights. How do you think this is going to affect PFL now, one of your employers, with them kind of being, it seemed as though not exactly that they were second fiddle, but that UFC is just like such a big name under ESPN, is that PFL is kind of like ESPN's like side, it seemed like a side project, but now that UFC is heading away from ESPN, do you think this is going to be a benefit for PFL? So now they can start airing more things or start putting more events on, and they know that they're going to get like the primary machine behind them? Do you think this is a positive, a negative, or do you think it'll have a neutral effect?
Number one, it's a positive because it leaves the ESPN space, as far as MMA goes, all to PFL. Secondly, anytime a promotion says we're worth $1 billion a year, PFL can go, we're the number 2, we're worth X, right? This shows the size of MMA itself. But, the UFC has always been the 800-pound gorilla. They take up all the oxygen in the sport. It's very, very difficult to get anything done kind of in their shadow. And it's a positive for PFL. But PFL's still in a very, very tough spot. You're trying to make MMA news, you're trying to make MMA headlines when the MMA headlines and the MMA news is always dominated by the UFC. So it does help them, but they're still in a very, very difficult position when it comes to combat sports and MMA specifically, because the UFC is just, most people don't even know what MMA is. When you say MMA, they don't know what you're talking about. When you go UFC, they're like, oh, okay, UFC. I mean, they have a brand awareness that Coke would kill for. Because when I order a Pepsi, people know what I'm talking about. A lot of times when you go outside the UFC, I mean, fans just don't even know that there is MMA outside the UFC. I mean, that's how dominant their brand positioning is. So the UFC moving out of ESPN does help PFL. And the fact that it shows how big the UFC and MMA potentially is with this $7 billion deal does help the PFL. But once again, they're still in a difficult position trying to make space in a market that is crowded by the UFC completely.
That is true. That is true. And it's a similar effect to WWE and professional wrestling. I think it was recently NBA All-Star Tyrese Halliburton, who's been featured a lot on WWE programming. He did an interview with like a pro wrestling podcast, and they were asking him, hey, are you a pro wrestling fan? And he was like, I'm a WWE fan. So it's kind of similar thing. Like that brand name is such a big, like you said, 800-pound gorilla that it's hard to get around that as far as delving into other promotions within that particular sport. So, but yes, we will see how everything works out with that deal. But before I do let you go, because I know time is precious for you, sir. You're a very, very busy man. But I did want to touch on something that you brought up on your YouTube channel. You mentioned, yes, you mentioned ungifted fighters. And for those who may not be aware or may not have watched that particular video, I just wanted to let you elaborate on that, and then we could kind of go from there.
Yeah, well, what I did is that I was talking about, BJ Penn, the trouble he's had recently, and one of the things I said is how gifted BJ Penn was. His talent level was just off the chart. Black belt world champion in 3 years, amazing 155-pound champion in the UFC. And so I said, hey, I'm going to make another list of the fighters that were kind of ungifted, that were just blue-collar, hardworking guys who didn't have any one particular trait that made them great. We didn't necessarily expect them to be champion. And my list was like Frankie Edgar, Michael Bisping, Rich Franklin, Randy Couture, Stipe Miocic. That was my kind of the grinders team is the way I saw it. And those were the guys who, once again, didn't have any real physical gifts, but just overperformed when it came to their abilities in the octagon, man.
Yes. And I do agree. All of those people are well-deserving to get on that list. I did have some folks in mind because if you're not aware, Brother Smith, we try to highlight folks, and we try to delve into diversity of mixed martial arts, and we try to delve into just. It's a lot of people that just see it as monochromatic, and so we try to shine some light on fighters who they may not be recognized a lot. So I do have a few fighters. I do have my own team, and I'm going to throw some names at you, and I just want you to tell me. Just tell me, let me know if they would make your list. So I got a honorable mention. So honorable mention, and some of these honorable mention, they may not have been like championship style fighters, but I think they still kind of exhibit everything that you've thrown out there. So Leonard Garcia, throwback, WEC. Forrest Griffin, former UFC light heavyweight champion. You think so?
Yeah, Forrest Griffin for sure. Leonard Garcia was never what I consider great. He's a good fighter, really, really solid. I put him kind of like the guys that I left off were like the Jim Millers, right? Joe Lazon, hardworking guys who were good but not great. I think Forrest Griffin was great.
Okay. And then one more that I had in my honorable mention, and this might fall under your good but not great, is Neil Magny.
Neil Magny, good, not great. Every time Neil Magny had that kind of, he had some big upsets. Hector Lombard, who was getting the crap beaten out of him, came back in that fight. I called his fight in Argentina. He got the piss beaten out of him. The problem is he had this like kind of comeback ability. Later on in his career, he just started taking beatings he couldn't come back from. Yeah. Also, freaky tall, freaky rangy, did have these weird physical gifts. I tried to pick fighters that in their division didn't have any particular gifts. Neil Magny's a tall, lanky dude, has great range. If you want to call that a physical gift, he definitely had it. Another guy that I thought I missed on that list was Bilal Muhammad. Called a lot of his fights a grinder, a worker, never really thought he'd be UFC champion. He surprised everyone. Leon Edwards, the man he took the title from, was a guy who technically very good, but didn't have any particular, didn't have great stopping power, wasn't particularly fast, and still became champion. So 3 names I probably left off was Forrest Griffin, Bilal Muhammad, and Leon Edwards.
All right, gotcha. All right, so I'll throw a few more names at you, and you let me know if they make the team or not. All right, so first, let's go back. Aljamain Sterling.
Aljo. Yeah, man, he is great, but I always saw him as a really talented dude. Like, if you've ever met him, which I have, man, freaky build, really strong, explosive. He was a generally pretty athletic guy. So I would put him, he was gifted. I thought he was a really gifted athlete.
Gifted. All right. Yeah. All right. So the grind is just secondary. He still has. He
was really good. Explosive, really gifted, I thought.
All right. What about Daniel Cormier?
Daniel Cormier, and someone on the comment section mentioned DC, and the guy underneath him put what I thought. He goes, man, you can't be a 2-time Olympian and not be a pretty damn good athlete. Yeah. He was pretty athletic. Now, what I think people discount is, he kind of had the dad bod, but he was really explosive and really strong. And I know his team. I'm from California, so I've trained some people who have trained with him. And we're like, dude, no, he's a really good athlete. Don't let the build fool you. He's a great athlete. So I think people look at him and don't think he's athletically gifted. You don't make 2 Olympic teams unless you're a gifted athlete. I think he still has athletic gifts.
Gotcha. All right. I got a few more for you. Let's go. There we go. Rashad Evans.
You know what's funny? I worked with Rashad Evans when I was with the UFC. And when we were talking one time about his knee injury and that kind of, cost him his prime and all this stuff, he told me a story. And part of the reason I wouldn't put him on my not gifted list, he goes, Jimmy, I would just make it up as I went. Like, I knew I was going to do something and I did it. Like, I just kind of went, I'm going to do this. Bing, bang, bang. And goes, and it would work. His knee injury, he goes, I started thinking about what I was doing and it made it less athletic for me. And my style really suffered because, Jimmy, in my prime, dude, I just went, I think I'll do this. Boom, boom. And I did it. And I talked to some of his training partners because, obviously, once again, we're of similar eras. And they're like, dude, he was a really good athlete. Like he could really explosive. He'd hit you with a big shot. You wouldn't necessarily see it. So, and when I talked to him, he goes, yeah, man, I was just athletically gifted. I just got away with a lot of stuff. And so that's why he didn't make my list. Is he told me himself, he goes, yeah, a lot of times, like, It wasn't training. I was just good at going, I think I'm going to do this, and it worked. And it worked almost every time. That's why he became champion. He was another guy, I thought, in his prime, a destructive athlete. A little small for 205, for sure, but still an explosive athlete in his prime.
See, that's the only reason, because I did watch the video when you mentioned like guys who are undersized for the division.
He was definitely undersized for 205. Yeah, for sure.
And especially for the Ultimate Fighter when he fought heavyweight.
Dude, he fought heavyweight and he took on some big dudes. Brad Hines, the guy he beat in the finals, was huge. But also when you look at like when he knocked out Chuck Liddell, it was boom, this beautiful overhand, super fat. Like the dude just did explosive stuff, man. He was gifted, I think, at the time.
I think, and I do take into the consideration the knockout power as well. So, definitely. All right, so I'm 0 for 3. I'm 0 for 3 so far. Let's see if I get all. This person may be on that good, not great list. Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung.
Man, he had a chin from hell, but yes, definitely a grinder, definitely a worker. Never became champion, but fought for a title. He'd be on an all grinder list for sure, because his only gift was really his chin. He could take a shot like nobody else, but wasn't fast, wasn't explosive, wasn't particularly quick. You know what I mean? Just outworked guys. But once again, never the number one guy, but I'll definitely put him on the grinder list for sure, man. Because he came, if you fight for a title like that, you could be on the list for sure.
All right. I got one. Okay. And last one is my wild card now. So, and this will fall more into your expertise as well, being a former voice of Bellator. We have Joe Warren.
Oh my God. For sure. Dude, when I saw, this is a kind of an insider story. When Joe Warren won his first bout in Bellator, it was in the tournament, in back in the tournament days, and he won. And then on the other side of the bracket was a guy named Georgi Karahanian. And Georgi Karahanian had knocked out a guy named Balquach, and Georgie begged Bjorn Rebney, the guy who was running Bellator, to fight Joe Warren, because Joe Warren just looked so beatable. He's like, dude, I got this guy, And Joe Warren outworked Georgi Karahanian and put him on his butt for that whole fight. Then he took on Patricio Pitbull. We thought he had no chance against Patricio Pitbull, and he won a decision there. It was like every time he thought, Joe Warren can't beat this guy, he would somehow do it. Yeah, for sure. For sure, he's a grinder. Yes, Greco-Roman world champion, but an All-American at Michigan. He was not a national champion. He wasn't like the guy coming out of college. So he kind of like taught himself Greco late and ended up being a world champion. So definitely. And I've had the privilege of grappling with Joe, and same deal. Like, yeah, he's strong for his size, but plenty of guys are strong for their size. It's almost a prerequisite. Right. Definitely, I put Joe on the grinder list for sure, man, for sure.
Yeah, I think his biggest gift was the gift of gab. I think he did an interview where he said, exactly. I think he said, if you put me and Brock Lesnar in the alley, I'm walking out the alley. I was like, ooh, this guy can talk. But all right, that's my 5. And so I think I got a couple. You did, man. For you to consider. All right. Well, I appreciate the time. I know you said you got to head on out, but thank you so much for joining me. This was a real treat, a real pleasure, Jimmy. Thank you.
Hey, man, really appreciate it. Anytime you let me know, I'll be back on, man. Thank you so much.
Indeed. Did you want to let the people know where they can find you, sir?
ProBox TV. I'm calling a fight August 15th. That is this Friday on ProBox TV. It's up in Tampa, Florida. I'm driving up there myself. I'm going to have a great time with that, but that's my normal gig. I'm in the offices right now here at ProBox giving this interview, but check me out on ProBox TV. I'm there every day for news, and then check out the fights.
Indeed. Please check out ProBox TV. Check out when he's on for PFL. Also, check out his YouTube channel. He has a lot of good stuff on there. In fact, I'm sure you're going to have your picks coming out for UFC 319.
I will.
Man. Oh, indeed. So, again, appreciate you. This was a tremendous pleasure, sir, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, man. Thanks for having me, bud.
No problem. Take care, sir. All right. That was Jimmy Smith. Thanks again. Just a huge get for me, and personal. If not for you guys, for me personally, it was a big deal for me, and I'm glad you guys got to kind of pick his brain a little bit I wanted to pick his brain a little bit more about just his history in the sport and his history as far as combat sports and martial arts goes. But when news calls, it calls, and we had to get directly to the news involving UFC and Paramount combining forces. So, well, with that, it's going to be a shorter episode, but it's not over yet, folks. Stay tuned. When we come back from break, I'm going to go ahead and just tell you guys my personal thoughts about the deal coming up. My personal thoughts about the deal coming up, how it's going to affect the landscape of MMA, and just how it affects everything involved in combat sports. So, also, by the time that you hear this will be happening after UFC 319. So I won't get into a big preview. And since I really can't read the future, I can't tell you who won or who lost. But I will give you my thoughts on what's going to come out from that fight. What do I think is going to come out from that fight? And if I'm right, then I did predict the future. So all that coming up right after this. Hi. It's your boy Two-Way Ray, and I'm just coming across your earwaves and interrupting this program for a very important message from us here at Nefarious Media Network. You see, we know that you guys love helping us out. And by the way, if you're hearing that little ditty in the background and you're familiar with our work, you know that's when we start feeding the ducks around here on the parlay. But in order to continue to support programs here like the Parlay, like the Adventures Initiative, like TDT Talks and Kung Fu Island, and of course the flagship Kings of Sport podcast, we just need you guys to help us out. And there are a few ways that you can do that. You see, one way is completely free. And that's by supporting us on all of our social media channels, whether it be X/Twitter, whether it be Instagram, or whether it be even our YouTube channel while we're on the drive for 500. You can follow us on all those different platforms absolutely free. Just type in Nefarious Media Network and it should take you right to it. Other ways that you can support us, again, another way that's completely free is by sharing us with your friends, with your family, even your enemies. Everybody needs a good podcast to listen to now and then, so please make sure to spread the word. And one more way that we can continue to bring truthful, thoughtful, and turned up entertainment and education to your earlobes and to your eyeballs is by supporting us on the Patreon, patreon.com/Nefarious Media Network. You see, you can get over 300 hours of great entertainment and education, whether it be in the realms of comic books or sports, professional wrestling, politics, even on sometimes education, as Professor Chris can drop some knowledge on you every now and then. So please, it costs you $5 a month. As Brother Nate loves to say, $5 gets you in the door. If you want to pay more, we won't stop you. And while you're
joining the Patreon, or while you're a part of the Patreon, be on the lookout for the perks that we offer you guys. Be on the lookout for live watches that you can directly be a part of. Also be on the lookout for exclusive audio that cannot be found anywhere else but the Patreon, including our Styles Break Fights Extra podcast, where either myself and Chi-Chi will come on the air and just give you more information about what we talked about, or if there's any breaking news in the MMA world. So please be on the lookout for those things if you're already a member. And if you're not a member, go ahead, $5 for the cost of a biggie bag, less than a biggie bag nowadays. You can be a part of this revolution as it's getting broadcasted. So we appreciate you guys for supporting us thus far. And we ask that if you're not supporting us in any of those ways that I mentioned, that you please help out the cause. As I mentioned before, the drive for 500 goes along not only with the YouTube channel, but also with the Patreon subscriptions. So please, if you can spare, we would really appreciate it. But if you can't, any of those free options are available as well. So with that, I thank you so very much for listening. And let's get on back to the program. Yeah. Feed those ducks. Oh, yeah. Feed those ducks. Preview of some. If we get to 500, feed those ducks. And we are back from break. Thank you so much again for joining us. And I want to again send our thanks and our appreciation out to Brother Jimmy Smith for joining us. It was an absolute treat getting to chat with him. He's very, very knowledgeable. He's an encyclopedia, not only of mixed martial arts, but also for other history, which I wanted to delve into. He actually graduated from UCLA with a history degree, and I wanted to kind of pick his brain about that, but we'll save that for next time. Hopefully we could get him back on when he's available. But as we talked at the top of the show, breaking news. Well, it's not well, I guess it's breaking. If it's still within the day, it's breaking. And man, UFC signing a new television rights deal with Paramount over the course of 7 years for a total of $7.7 billion. That's billion with a B, folks. Which averages out to $1.1 billion. Like Brother Jimmy said earlier, their current deal, it was 5 years under ESPN for a total of $1.5 billion with a B. So that was split up. It's a big jump from around $200 million per year to $1 billion per year. So like you said, that proves the growth and the expansion of the brand UFC has paid dividends literally for them. So I did want to get into some stuff real quickly. Again, this is going to be well, considering our episodes that we usually have, this is going to be on the shorter end. So I did want to get to how I believe this affects pretty much not only MMA, but also combat sports, really. And we kind of touched upon it with Jimmy earlier when we talked about how boxing is just it's at a down period. You can never say boxing is dead, because once you say boxing is dead, and it's always going to rise up with a big thing. As I mentioned before, Terrence Bud Crawford is going to be fighting Saul Canelo Alvarez, which is going to be considered like the biggest fight within the past decade. And so it'll be interesting to see how that fight does before we declare boxing is dead. And whether you like him or not, Jake Paul has really kind of reinvigorated boxing as well, with his not only his promotion but also with him being active as a fighter as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And we talked about, well, I don't think we mentioned this during the interview, but WWE had a recent deal with Netflix, or not Netflix, but with ESPN rather, as far as airing all of their PLEs, or premium events, I'll call them, on that particular network. And so I thought it was going to be easy to kind of transition, especially since UFC was already in bed with ESPN, that it would be easier, especially if you have WWE, then you have everything under one umbrella. But this just shows that even though TKO is an entire conglomerate within itself, that the UFC and ESPN are still two separate entities, even though they're like sister entities, they're separate entities. And so this just shows that the UFC, the brass at the top of the UFC, felt that it would be more of a benefit to side with Paramount Plus, which we haven't really seen, especially with, and bear with me, folks, because I'm just trying to parse this stuff out. You already had, so Paramount was, I'm about to say accustomed, not occupied, but Paramount was bought. I'll just say bought out by Skydance Entertainment. And so we figured the merger with that would kind of like limit the pockets for Paramount. But then we see they pay out the money, they shell out the money, 5 years for a total of $1.5 billion to Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the owners and creators of South Park. So they shelled that out, and now we see they're shelling out the money for the UFC to gather their rights. Now, you could, in theory, and I wouldn't put it past you, and I would tend to agree with you on this point, that you would see South Park and UFC both as entities that can kind of earn that money back within the span of like a couple of years, especially if you talk about South Park with the merchandising, and you also have like video games and different things that South Park can bring you as far as profit is concerned. And then you consider what the UFC can bring you as well, with profit. And we're not even talking about the money that they make through live events and all that stuff. We're strictly talking from a broadcast perspective. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, I know a lot of people, and it kind of sprung up in my mind as well. Oh, you guys got all this money to pay the UFC and South Park, but you can't pay money to keep Stephen Colbert on the air. Again, it's probably like they said, and if you dig into it now, if you think it with your third eye now, you see, oh, so now this brother with Dana White, who is chummy with who? 45, 47. He's chummy with our head of state. But then you look over to the reverse and see Stephen Colbert, who's not as chummy, and matter of fact, can be adversarial with our head of state here in the US of A. And now all of a sudden, he's getting shipped off, especially with Paramount wanting to have this deal done and closed out by the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, which is under who? That's right, 45, 47. So if you're putting the strings together, no, but if you put the conspiracy brother brain away, then you could just say, hey, UFC can profit like a ton more than this Late Show, which has been losing money, which has been hemorrhaging money. Acquired is the word that I was looking for. Paramount was acquired by Skydance. But anyway, ADD away. Then you look at South Park. Oh, we could get a bunch more money in terms of revenue as far as with streaming and as far as, like I mentioned earlier, with merchandising that we could never get with Stephen Colbert. So if you put that on into perspective, then people can make either argument. So, oh man, what I am wondering about, and I've seen a lot of other people wonder about this as well, is what are we going to do with the Ultimate Fighter? What are we going to do with Dana White's Contender Series? What are we going to do with all of the library material when you go back to past fights, past pay-per-views, not only in the UFC, but when we're talking about the Pride library, when we're talking about Strikeforce library, when we're talking about Shudo, all this stuff that you would normally have on UFC Fight Pass as well. Like, none of that stuff was mentioned in the press briefings from either the UFC or from Paramount. It was only mentioned 13 live marquee events, which are the numbered specials, and the fight night, 30 fight night events per year. Those were the only things that were mentioned. So my guess, I believe it's going to come over sooner or later. I believe they're going to, because we shouldn't have a situation where, all right, ESPN Plus keeps keeps the past library stuff, keeps the Contender Series, keeps all that stuff, but then only the live stuff is airing over here. It's like, now I got to pay a subscription for ESPN Plus if I just want to go back and see. Like, I had the mind of going back and watching like some old fights and stuff, and I was like, man, I gotta go back over here to the X, and she's steaming, and then I gotta go over to this new boot thing. Like, come on now. And I'm paying them both. Like, I'm paying because I'm a good father, despite what Nate Milton says, of my hypothetical 3 children. So I got to go to my baby mama. I got to pay her money, make sure that I'm stepping up as the dad and not just being a stepdad. But then I got to go over to my new thing because she likes expensive things. So yeah, it's crazy. You got to go back and forth. If that is the case, I don't see that being a case where you have to go back and forth between ESPN and Paramount Plus to get the totality of the UFC package. I'm hoping they'll put it all in one place, and I think they're pretty much kind of working those kinks out as we speak as well. Just similar to the ESPN and WWE deal, where a lot of people were like, well, what's it going to be? Is it only going to be pay-per-views or PLEs rather? And what else is coming over? And what else do I get if I do pay this $30? Because I was paying like $8 if you go like the minimum with Peacock to get the pay-per-views. Then I was paying Netflix to get Raw. Then I was paying regular cable, or
I had to at least pay to get my digital antenna to get SmackDown or CW, and then like CW is in NXT and SmackDown, and so it's like, man, it's like, why not have everything all in one place? So, or you could get yourself a VPN and you get everything all at once if you live in the United States. But that is not sponsored. I didn't mention a particular VPN company, although if they want to sponsor, let us know. But yeah, unless you go either that route or by nefarious means. But I think ESPN, like a couple days had passed, and then more details were coming out about, all right, well, only these certain providers. If you have these certain providers, then you don't even have to pay the $30, as long as you have, I believe Spectrum was one, Cox TV, but Comcast was not on the list. YouTube TV was not on the list. So if you have those particular providers, then you can get the new ESPN DTC or direct to consumer streaming platform for free once it comes out in March of 2026. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But yeah, you could use. It'll be interesting to see if more providers come along with it. But yeah, if you don't have those providers, you do got to pay the $30, and it's only for all PLEs. But all PLEs are included. But it didn't mention any of the library content. It didn't mention any of like main event. It didn't mention like none of the documentaries or anything being involved with that particular deal with ESPN. It only mentioned the PLEs. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from there. Man, but the landscape, man, oh, I don't know, man. And then I think it's a really good thing. Well, again, and this is a MMA podcast, and I'm sorry, but I already mentioned wrestling already, but I think I'm gonna mention it a little bit more in regards to this UFC deal. So again, you got this UFC deal with Paramount. Paramount is going to start. The deal is going to start in 2026. Paramount per month costs $13.99. I believe it's like the highest. It's like the highest, not chain, but the highest particular thing that you can choose. I just say thing for lack of a better word. But that's the service. The highest structure of the service that you could choose is at $13.99, I believe, per month. And again, that gets you all of the not fight pass, but all of the fight night cards and the numbered special events or marquee events for free. So how does that affect? And Jimmy mentioned that he thinks the pay-per-view model is pretty much on its last legs. I venture to guess that, yeah, I think so too. Not only in boxing, but also in professional wrestling. Like with WWE, again, $30 a month, you get PLEs included. And if you're a big sports fan, you're already getting ESPN. And that DTC is going to include ESPN, ESPN Plus, SEC Network, ESPNU, ESPN The Ocho. So you get all of that and WWE events for $30 a month. Like that's a no-brainer if I'm a big sports fan, especially me covering
me covering sports, in addition to covering combat sports, covering like general popular sports as well. So for me, that would be really good. That would be really good. But for those who only are tuning in for the PLEs, I mean, essentially, it could just be like you're paying $30 per month for PLE, which, again, if you got them, if you got that VPN, when we go over to AEW, US prices are usually $50 per pay-per-view with AEW. But now you got with PLEs, with WWE on ESPN, they're going to be essentially $30 per PLE, even if you're only going for the PLEs. So that's like $20 less, unless you're paying with that VPN, and then you can get the pay-per-views for All Elite Wrestling for $25, like your boy does on occasion. It's not illegal. I don't know why I'm whispering, but I just don't want nobody else to take my deals. But I think it's going to be affected in that way. Now it's like, well, UFC, I could get everything under one subscription price below $20. In fact, not even $30, but $20. I could get everything from the UFC. Why I gotta pay $30 for this DTC from ESPN? Why I gotta pay $50 for a pay-per-view from through Bleacher Report or through pay-per-view.com or through all these other sites that I gotta go through Triller? Like, why would I do that if this particular brand is offering within the combat sports space? This particular brand is offering their big events for less than half that AEW offers their particular events. And by the way, we haven't seen, like, and maybe we might see in the future, especially with AEW being involved with Max or HBO Max now, going back to that name. But maybe we see future deals, because that's what I thought initially at the beginning of the year was going to be with AEW, that they were going to start streaming not only their TV cards like Collision and Dynamite on AEW included in the service, but that they were also going to include their pay-per-views or their special live events within that eventually. We haven't seen that just yet. So maybe that's going to be within the realm of what Warner Brothers is going to be thinking of now that they're no longer Warner Brothers Discovery. So it'll be interesting to see how the UFC deal affects AEW. Again, they're two different brands of entertainment, but they're similar and they're within that combat sports bubble. So it'll be interesting to see where AEW goes from there, to be like, where fans will be like, well, I really don't want to pay $50 a month, especially if I only got to pay $30 a month for a PLE, if I only got to pay $14 in the month for a numbered event from UFC. If you happen to watch all three, like your boy. So it'll be, it's going to be, I know, interesting is just my go-to word, my go-to default word, but it really is we're going to have to see what happens with this deal with UFC. And we kind of touched on it in the interview. Fans, net positive for the fans, cheaper, no pay-per-view. Pay-per-view is dead. Then it's a net positive for UFC. UFC is pretty much getting what they earned throughout the life of a 5-year deal from ESPN. They're pretty much getting that per year with Paramount Plus. So that's a win for them. Paramount Plus
they're getting on this huge revenue driver that's only getting, I don't want to say better. I mean, in a way it's better, but it's only getting bigger as far as like a brand within the United States. It's only getting bigger, especially with the sport, or not the sport, but especially with the particular brand of UFC being co-opted by a particular political party or particular political affiliation, if you will, which I won't say is neither here nor there, but something that we could discuss at another time. If you don't want this episode to go the usual time of 2 hours, then we won't discuss it right now. But yeah, with that attachment to it now, it's going to seem like, well, now this is like the big thing. And even bad attention is attention nonetheless. So the more eyeballs that they're getting to it, the better. And the more they'll be promoting with it, and more advertising revenue that they'll be bringing in as well. So it's a net positive for everybody involved except the fighters. Like we brought up and discussed, they don't have an athletes association. They don't have a union. They don't have a collective, which means they don't have a collective bargaining agreement with the UFC. So it'll be interesting to see where they go from there, how they can be able to negotiate it if they pretty much don't have any leverage, like Jimmy said. They don't have any leverage unless everybody comes together, especially if we see what happens if the championship fighters can do not get any points, since there are no more pay-per-views. They don't get any points to the bigger events. So that'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Like, I mean, does that then give motivation to these big time fighters to actually join the collective and be like, hey, if we're not going, you just got this giant deal. If we're not going to be well compensated for our efforts, and we're just, all of us are going to sit out. Like, I think that is what it's going to take. And I've heard John Pollock from Post Wrestling mention it before. If there was any time that the fighters had leverage, it was during the COVID era, where everything was shut down, and they could have made, like, they could have set the standard in terms of, hey, we're not going to accept like these 50,000 show and win. We're not going to accept that anymore. We're going to take a full, we want the win bonus to be included in the regular pay, the standard pay bonus, and we want all of these other benefits that we haven't been getting. We want health care year-round, regardless of whether it happened during training or not. Like, they had the leverage during that COVID time, especially when Dana White was considering going to Indian reservations to set up fights. Like, they had the leverage, and they let it slip away because you had some fighters who were on the upper echelon or like, I'm not sacrificing this. And then you had lower fighters who are just like, well, I might throw away my chance to get into that upper echelon and make that kind of money. And now you're seeing it. You're seeing the chickens come home to roost. So it sucks for the fighters, but yeah, you make your bed, you got to lay in it. So we'll see what happens as far as if they can recoup and if they can get a particular percentage. Best thing that I think is going to happen for them, or I think the bare minimum that they're going to get is maybe they'll raise the bonuses. Maybe they'll raise the bonuses from 50,000 to like 200,000 if they feeling generous. Maybe on all of the
special marquee event cards. But I think that's the most that they're going to get out of them. They raise the bonuses. But then again, you got to work for it. You got to earn the bonus. You got to be exciting. You got to do all this stuff, whereas getting paid, especially in this sport, Jimmy said it, like these guys don't feel it until they get out of the sport. And then you get all of this stuff that's happening with them, with their bodies, because they were involved in this particular sport. Like, you should have been going after the most that you can make, especially within the window that you have to participate in this sport. But again, fighters don't see it, or at least the majority of fighters didn't see it that way. So we'll see what happens with this deal. We'll see what happens with the rest of like the library content, and with the Ultimate Fighter, and with Dana White's Contender Series. We'll see how all that is added on. By the time you listen to this, a lot more information may have come out about these things. So please take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm just speaking to you as of August 11th. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap this puppy up. Like I said, 319, UFC 319. I won't give predictions on the whole main card. I'll just give predictions on the main event with Khamzat Chimaev versus DDP Dricus du Plessis, a.k.a. Still Knox. We still waiting for that case of Knox. Come on, brother. It's not too late. We can still promote for you. Chi-Chi is in the motherland as we speak. You can have her out on the corner passing them out for free. Don't tell her I said that, though. But yeah, we still here for a sponsorship, Dricus. Don't. We're building up. We're building up our brand. We're building up our brand. We're building up our reach, if you will. So go ahead, give us a chance, Knox. Premium hydration drink. But yes, I want to say it's hard for me to make a choice, but it really isn't that hard. Because even though you do have this monster in Khamzat Chimaev, you have this monster who's just been wrecking folks, both in welterweight and in middleweight. Thing is, though, we haven't seen him really tested by top-tier competition. You could say he was tested by Robert Whittaker in his last fight, but Robert Whittaker, I think, has been out of his prime for at least like a year. So, I don't know if I could really trust him. And as I mentioned on this program before, I don't know why I did that with my lips. But as I said on this program before, I'm stopping with the doubt that I have for Dricus du Plessis. I pretty much thought he was going to wipe the floor with Sean Strickland in the rematch. Didn't necessarily do that, but he did assert himself to the point is where we knew Dricus won that match. I thought he was going to lose to Izzy. Turns out, chokes out Izzy. So I'm done doubting this guy. I think he has what it takes to be amongst the best, not only within that division when it comes to Anderson Silva or Rich Franklin's, but I think he has the tools to be one of the pound for pound best right now. So I'm going to give it at least by the time you hear this, hopefully Dricus du Plessis will have won by this time. And then we're talking about what's next for Dricus. We're talking about if Khamzat is going back down to 170, kind of to regroup, or if he's staying at 185. So we'll see what happens, especially if he goes down to 170. And there's the whole another can of worms when you talk about not DDP, but Jack Della Maddalena going up against Islam Makhachev, and then who's going to be the one to kind of come out the wreckage in that one. So it'll be interesting. It's an interesting month of mixed martial arts coming up, and I'm looking forward to it. I am definitely looking forward to it. So with that said, hopefully by this time you have enjoyed UFC 319. You thought it was a great card. Whether you thought it was a great card or a horrible card, let us know, man. Let us know on everywhere you can find us online, whether it be our Twitter/X at KOS_POD, or at least for the Twitter and X at KOS_POD. We're at Blue Sky, Nefarious Media Network .bsky.social. See, that's so long. See, Blue Sky, you're gonna have to condense that, baby. You can also find us on YouTube at Nefarious Media Network 2025. You can find us on Instagram at Nefarious Media. You can find us on TikTok at NEF_media. And as we mentioned off the top and midway through this particular broadcast, you can find us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Nefarious Media Network, as we are on the drive for 500 Patreon paid subscribers, 500 regular YouTube subscribers. We're looking into the membership, but before we get to the membership, we got to get to the 5. So please, if you have it to spare, please consider joining us over there at patreon.com/Nefarious Media Network. Again, 300 plus hours of podcasting goodness, whether it be within the realm of politics or professional wrestling or general traditional sports or MMA, right over here at SBF and our SBF extras. Like whatever you have the hankering for, even if it's comic books. We actually, at the time of this recording on the same day, we're going to be having issue 2 of Super Salad coming out, with us reviewing Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm about to call it Fantastic Four Fantastic Steps. But yes, you could join us there and get that downloaded as well. So all the perks included as far as getting additional audio, especially considering the SBF extras. Also, you'll be able to join us for any live streams or live watch parties that we have coming up. We just had one for WWE SummerSlam. If you were there, you saw my immediate disappointment when a certain UFC champion returned to WWE after allegations that are still open and pending and have not been resolved. You saw my immediate live reaction there. So you can join us. You could be on the call with us if I get either very, very excited that a particular thing has happened, or I'm getting very disappointed that one particular person returned to the company. You could be there. You could witness either my excitement or my desperation and my depression live on there. You could be there if you are a paid Patreon subscriber. So please consider joining us on that. If not, please consider joining us on any of our free platforms within social media. We would really, really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to go ahead and play ourselves out. Thank you so much. You know where you can find me, anywhere here on the Nefarious Media Network. Also, if you do insist, if you want to follow me individually, find me at Ray
Twitter at Mondo, Mondo, number 1. And you can find Chi at Chinyere Okafor _ on all the platforms. And go ahead and check her out on YouTube as well. She's got good content coming out on her YouTube channel, Chi-Chi's Combat Corner. So please make sure to support us in every way you can. So with that, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. This has been a jam-packed episode. And again, thanks go out to Brother Jimmy Smith. Follow him wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you can watch YouTube videos, at Jimmy Smith MMA on everything. With that, my name is Two-Way Ray Williams. We appreciate you listening again to another installment of the Styles Break Fights podcast. With that, good fight, good night, peace out. See you next time.